Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
I agree. And I think that happens a lot when for me as an example, I was probably more worried, not actually of failing, because I feel like I could pick myself up pretty quick, but I was afraid of what people would see or think of me because of that, right? So for me, it was I had to uphold this image. I had said I was going to be all these things for everybody. And, for me, it came down to a lot of control issues and the worry of not being able to be as authentic as I believed that I was. I think that, really is what it came down to, because I was afraid of, in hindsight, I was afraid of letting people around me down, even people that I didn't know, because of this image that I had created. I wanted to be seen, in a certain light. I wanted to be able to, execute on the plan that I had made, for myself and for my personal image.
Welcome to Inner Voice. This is a heartfelt chat where we explore how to clear the past, create a new future, and live a fulfilled life now. I'm your host, Dr. Foojan. I'm a psychotherapist, a life and a business coach, author, speaker, and the founder of the International Awareness Integration Institute. Each week, I bring you a heartfelt conversation about healing, self-awareness, relationships, mind and body well-being, emotional clarity, and creating a life that feels true to who you are, whether in your relationship or in your business. Today, I will be talking with Jennifer Stanford. She's a sought-after trust coach, keynote speaker, and CEO of Emergent Performance Solutions. With over 25 years of experience guiding complex organizations, Jen is known for her ability to simplify leadership and change management, making transformation practical and lasting. As the author of De-Stressed, her latest book, she empowers executives and teams to reduce stress, foster innovation, and thrive in high-pressure environments. Her approach blends a strategic insight with warmth and reliability, drawing from her background and experience speaking, consulting, and facilitating for large government agencies and Fortune 500 companies. So today I'm speaking with Jen, author of De-Stressed, about how stress affects not only our mind, but also our body, our relationships, our leaderships, and sense of purpose. Jen shares her personal journey of ignoring stress signals for years while carrying demanding roles, until a health crisis invited her to rethink how she managed pressure, perfectionism, and the need to control outcomes. In this conversation, we explore how stress shows up through different response patterns, logical, relational, action-oriented, and organized, and how understanding these patterns can help us support ourselves and families and our teams more effectively. We also talk about emotional intelligence, creating intentional spaces, releasing perfection, and using small daily habits to restore energy and resilience. If you have ever worn stress as a badge of honor, this conversation will invite you to pause, listen to your body, and choose a healthier way forward. My intention is that this conversation touches your heart, awakens your awareness, and gives you something meaningful to carry into your life. Let's begin. What if your emotional life didn't have to feel like a constant reaction or a constant recovery? Welcome to the International Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic, a global online clinic offering psychotherapy, coaching, integrative well-being services, and mind-body practices, all in one place. At International Awareness Integration Institute, we don't just talk about change, we train it. Our work is guided by awareness integration theory, an evidence-based psychological and educational model designed to reduce anxiety and depression patterns, strengthen emotional regulation, and help you build a life that feels meaningful, steady, and fulfilling. Whether you're navigating stress, relationship strain, burnout, life transitions, trauma symptoms, or simply the feeling that you've outgrown your old life, you'll find a clear path forward here. supported by licensed professionals and expert practitioners. If you're ready to feel better, think clearer, and live fully, join the International Awareness Integration Institute virtual clinic today. Visit awarenessintegration.com and book your first session or join our membership. Jennifer Stanford, everyone, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So nice to have you. I know you're sitting in a rainstorm right now in Florida, so I hope all will be well. So you have written the book, De-Stressed. I think every human being has an experience of, and every animal has the experience of stress. Stress is something that happens, whether it's happening from outside and whether we're creating it internally for ourselves, depending on what's happening outside. And it really puts a toll on our body. Most of, every single illness that is out there, the science says that it gets more exacerbated or even gets caused by stress that we don't know how to release. And I think most animals on a regular basis have a better way of releasing their stress unless it's chronic. But I think that as a human being, we've created beautiful lives, that these beautiful lives still create a momentum of this continuous stress, whether the external structure creates the consistent, or we're handling it anyway, but with the way we think about it, we create the consistency. So I know that this is so important for all of us to know how to de-stress. What got you to want to write about this? What was it about the stress that got your life in a way that now you just wanted to share with people?
Interesting, because when I started writing a book, on how change impacts us differently. That really is my lane: change management, transformation in organizations. And I wrote a chapter on stress, and I started to realize this is my story. This is really where I had been. I had been in a place where I was, the best mom, the best CEO, the best wife, best friend, the best everything. And I wasn't going to let anything stop me, right? That was what I wanted to be in this world. And I did that pretty successfully for a long time. But as you said, it was taking a toll on my body, and I was simply ignoring the signals. I wasn't paying attention. I was writing them off. I would say, I'm just busy. This is a busy season. And over time, my son was in college, and he had a pretty severe health scare that lasted for a while as we tried to, figure out what was going on. And then I had, just work issues, and I just was still trying to carry it all. And I thought, that is what a strong woman does, right? That's what a strong leader does. And I found myself in the ER. I had gotten pneumonia, and I ended up being out for a month. And I just watched things tumble. And I thought, gosh, what example am I setting for my daughter? What example am I setting for the employees that, that rely on me to be there and to be present? And so that shift in my life, when I wrote that chapter, it just clicked for me that this is really what the story is. And everything that deals with change can be traced back to stress. And I honestly would say that pressure, like you said, stress is everywhere, right? It's an event, it's an existence, it's part of, humanity and animal life as it was meant to be. But there's a difference. Pressure can be a great motivator, but when we cross over into stress, right, or distress from eustress, we're creating physiological moments in our body that we may not be able to handle. And I certainly at the time was not able to handle it after that pileup just came.
And I think that as the stress shows up, when we know how to release it, it comes in, like you said, it creates a motivation, it creates excitement for us, it creates resiliency, actually, where we know how to handle this. It seems like it becomes worse when we don't know how to let go of the stress, or we're not seeing the signs. Like I remember, even when I was in college, in my 20s, I had a lot of stomachache. Like my body was holding the stress. I had no idea how to release it. And my body would hold it. And I would just have, I had ulcers. I had so much issues. And it was interesting because the more I learned how to have more on my plate, I had to learn how to de-stress more, because every single excitement, every single growth process, everything was going to create a different level of stress, because something is new, it's novice. Obviously, you're stressed about learning something that is new. And if you just get stagnated and you don't want to move forward because it's stressful, then the stagnation by itself, it creates a different level of existential stress. So it's one of those things that you can't get away with, and you have to learn how to release this.
Yeah, sometimes the mind understands, but the body still holds the stress. That's why the International Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic offers mind-body services that help you regulate your nervous system, restore calm, and return to yourself physically, emotionally, and mentally. Our reflective practices include guided mindfulness, breath work, yoga, and grounding exercises, and specifically curated to support emotional regulation and physiological calm. Our somatic integration practices are a refined body-led approach where healing begins with presence, working with breath, sensation, posture, and gentle movement, so resilience becomes felt, not forced. And for those who want deeper whole person support, we offer functional well-being guidance, addressing the interplay between hormonal balance, digestion, sleep architecture, and lifestyle factors with a root cause holistic framework. This is not self-care as a luxury. This is self-regulation as a life skill and a pathway to fulfillment. Choose the support your body and life have been asking for. Visit awarenessintegration.com to join a weekly meditation, explore somatic healing, breathwork, yoga-inspired movement, or functional medicine services, and start feeling the difference.
How did you go through this process of connecting with yourself? I know chapters are there also about, what this does to your body. How did you learn? How was, this getting connected? Like you talked about your illnesses, but the next level, which is how to de-stress. What want you to know the next path?
I think it's interesting because I felt like I was releasing because I exercised every day, as an example, right? That was only one form of release, but I believed that as long as I was doing that, I was doing what I needed to do. And I just, again, kept ignoring those signals. And really, it wasn't until I had this crash, which is, part of my desire to get this in front of people, is so many high-performing leaders think as long as I have an exercise routine, as long as I'm eating decent, I'll be okay. Well, I found that, as an example, I would exercise, but I wasn't sleeping enough. Therefore, I would wake up in the morning feeling anxious, grab a cup of coffee, right? Or two or three, go into my day, make poor food choices. I didn't realize all the connections that were, I did gratitude journaling. I did some of the things, some of the times. So I would say really what changed for me is, and you could probably appreciate this, but was when I decided to get an emotional coach and a therapist to really help me see, why was I ignoring the stress signals? Why did I have such a propensity to have to achieve in spite of myself? Like, what was I going towards? And so I think that I needed to learn, like you said, to release in all of my energies, right? So, my intellectual energy, my physical energy, my purposeful energy, and my emotional energy, all those energies, I needed to realize that they were a system and not one-offs. And I had to really learn how to pay attention and create resilience for my entire system. And so, releasing those stressors. And honestly, for me, what it became was, in the beginning, it was release, and there's still some release, but then it was building up that strength of energy in all of those areas. That was really what became life-changing for me. And it's just very unfortunate that it didn't occur to me, or it didn't happen until my mid-40s, before I was able. I wish I'd known that in my 20s, right? I teach my children that it's, all the time, hoping that it'll make a difference in their lives.
Yes. And as you were talking, I was looking at, where did I learn? Yes, a lot more, probably even, I would say, in my 50s, where I had to let go of a lot of the attachments that I had in my head that would create this stress. Like I would come up with, well, a right leader or a right CEO's got to do this. And then I would get stuck in the rightness of what I said. And then I would really stress myself in that way. And this notion that I'm going to fail. And how do I handle the failure versus stressing of what if I fail? What would be the public embarrassment? Scare the shit out of myself with all the stuff that I presumed it would happen versus, okay, like it happens. And if it happens, then I'll deal with it. But to get to that place, there had to be a hell of a lot of humility that I would have to experience for releasing that attachment that I had to be perfect and all going and this and that. And I had to reach a certain place in order to feel worthy of being even a human being. There was a lot of belief systems there that were adding to the natural stress of any phase of life.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think that happens a lot when for me as an example, I was probably more worried, not actually of failing, because I feel like I could pick myself up pretty quick, but I was afraid of what people would see or think of me because of that, right? So for me, it was, I had to uphold this image. I had said I was going to be all these things for everybody. And, I for me, it came down to a lot of control issues and the worry of not being able to be as authentic as I believed that I was. I think that, really is what it came down to, because I was afraid of, in hindsight, I was afraid of letting people around me down, even people that I didn't know, because of this image that I had created. I wanted to be seen, in a certain light. I wanted to be able to, execute on the plan that I had made, for myself and for my personal image, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yes. Now, in your book, you talk about 4 different stress responses. So I'd like to go over them. One was the logical lens that you share. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So, everybody stresses differently. Our brains are just not wired the same. And so, as an example, I am married to a very logically minded man, and I am a very relationship oriented person. So, where I face things from an emotional standpoint, he faces them from a logical standpoint. And so, the things that stress us are quite different, usually quite opposite, even. And I think, a logical way person has to understand what are their stress triggers. And it's typically going to be emotion involved in a decision-making process, not enough data or information, not understanding the why or the big picture. And so when we understand that about ourselves and those around us, we're better able to maneuver stress situations, right, in a better format, instead of, as an example, I used to say this, instead of me trying to hug it out, during a particularly stressful time, that wasn't necessarily the stress response that worked for a logical person. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So when we're looking at a logical stress, it seems like for the person whose brain works in a logical level, they have to find a path of logic that possibly we were talking about that releases some of the paradigm that they've created. Like we were talking about, whether I'm afraid of the failure or am I afraid of how I will be seen? So then what kind of narrative I can come up, logically for myself in order to let go. Like I remember at one point I had a lot of high level of anxiety, like financial anxiety, where, will I survive? Will I do this? All of that. I moved as a 12-year-old on my own. So it was always like that type of an anxiety was always there. And I remember the logical perspective was that we went to Hawaii one day and I saw this beautiful ocean side. And then they had, the public bathrooms and the shower because it was on the beach. And, they had the tents around because people were just kind of, tenting in order to be on the beach. And then suddenly I'm driving, I'm like, that's the best place I can be if I didn't have anything. I'll find a friend who will give me one flight to Hawaii, to Maui. This is exactly where I would live. And it was interesting because a logical solution in my brain had gotten created where it took away the anxiety. And it's like, look at this beautiful place where I could just be. And so what I'm hearing from you also is when there is a logical stress point, there has to be a space where it can shift the paradigm from within the logic in that space where it could ease it, right?
Yeah, and I think part of that is, where is your brain naturally wired, right? Yeah. So logical minded people, right? Then I mentioned relationship,
yes,
right? Which is what I connect with the much, right? So relationship is going to be stress if there's not harmony, right? If we are noticing tension, in a room, that is going to be conflict, right? That is going to cause us natural stress. There's two other perspectives that the brain has, and that is the action oriented, so things aren't moving enough. There's too many boundaries, there's too much stagnation, right? That's stressful and not comfortable for an action way person. And then the final perspective is the organized way, which is the person that likes the routine, likes to make sure that things follow a plan. And so that is one of four perspectives. Most of us only operate from 1 to 2 of those perspectives naturally, right? We all have the capacity, though, to operate in all four of those, just not at the same time and not for a long period of time. So what actually ends up happening that is amazing is, if we are under a stress, we would probably over amplify what we would call that primary way, or the one we associated with the most. Right. So for me, as a relationship person, I may need more affirmation, more appreciation. I might be visibly more emotional, right? You might see that because I've gone to an extreme in my natural mindset. However, if we want to deal with stress in a healthy fashion, going to the one that is the least like us, right? So for me, my least are the organized way and the logical way. So if I am under extreme stress, if I go organize a closet or draw out on a whiteboard what the real problem is and try to gather the information, I'm actually getting out of my own head because it's not natural, and I have to focus to get into that place. And by doing that, I'm naturally relieving stress because now I'm out of that spin cycle that I found myself in. And so those become ways, by knowing all of them, we're not only able to deal with those around us better, right? If we just think about group awareness from an emotional intelligence standpoint, but we're able to redirect our own actions and emotions by knowing where we can go to either create resilience or at least temporary relief. Well, I can't live in an organized and logical fashion for very long before I become antsy. Right? There's only a certain amount of time I can be there, and that would be the same for anybody, whatever their lowest way is. But for short spurts of time, if I go there, I then can redirect my own brain to calm down, to focus, and to get a better handle on what's going on around me. Does that make sense?
Very much. And I hear I hear that there's a different level of ways that we create safety for ourselves, security for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So someone who is a logical person creates safety and security in the dynamic. Someone who's relational creates that in the hug that you said, or the knowing that I'm safe here. There's someone here for me. the action-oriented person knows that if I'm in control and, I'm proactive about something, I'm going to move this uncertainty to a certainty. And then the organized definitely creates certainty with organization and then creating systems. And what I'm hearing from you is that when someone has their safety within one of these four paradigms, if they're getting caught into theirs, then access to the other ones, whichever else is available for them, or they can access the other one, removes the attachment to one level that they're not getting and opens the door for them to be active and move to different parts of their brain, different parts of their needs, and bringing all of these together. And I can even see how, using all four of them in some format really brings the kind of like the organization of going from uncertainty to certainty, being proactive, knowing that I'm doing something, I'm in control of whatever it is I'm in control of. And then that by itself kind of brings down the kind of stress that shows up mostly with anxiety or decluttering or organizing. All of that is almost gives us a sense of agency in a space that we might have lost agency at that moment.
So true. I mean, you're exactly correct. And I think we can do that on an individual level, right? Being cognizant, but I'm also always encouraging teams. So if teams are working together by bringing in all four, like you said, we're really able to make sure that we're addressing any of the stress triggers or response actions within a group of people without necessarily having to know what is your, primary way, as an example. What do you relate to the most? If we can learn in a group setting to make sure we're tapping on all of those, even if it's just for a few minutes, we have a much broader perspective in which to give people that agency that you talked about to then deal with and move on. And I really believe that's how we create resilience within teams and ourselves.
Be stressed. Everyone, go get this book by Jennifer Stanford, Proven Strategies for Leaders to Lower Stress and Boost Performance. You were talking about teams. I was even talking because right before we started, I had a coaching session with a CEO. And it was interesting because they were also talking about the concept of how family, they're stressed with the family system, which is a young child there, and everybody's being stressed about, how to handle work and the young child and all of that. So by the time he got to work, he was beat already. Like, I can't handle all of that. And partially it was the same thing, like when two people in the family system, also each one of them, as you shared at the beginning, like between you and your husband, when you got families and you have, many children, each at a different age, everybody stresses in a particular way and de-stresses, and they come from a different place. So when you shared about the team, whether this team is at your home or the team is at work, which you're, 8 to 10 hours with them working with the creating projects, this concept of first getting to know what works for you, and then opening this concept of in how to bring this into a balance where each person comes from a different place. They get overwhelmed by the stress and it holds them back. And sometimes you even sabotage yourself because you're so stressed that you stop every angle of your life, right? Mm-hmm. So for example, when I was talking to this CEO, he was saying that because there's so much happening at home, which is chaotic with young children now added to the system, that he was just becoming debilitated. It's like, I give up even the team at work. It's it can't transfer.
Sure.
How do you share your methodology to create this type of teamwork at work?
I think the biggest thing in all of that is the leader, in this case, the CEO that you were coaching. We have to find a way as leaders to create space to understand the signals in our life, right? So sure, you feel chaos, right? You might be experiencing chaos, but are you really taking a moment to say, What is it? What is my role in it? What do I have control over versus what I don't? And what is really important for me to carry into the office versus is there anything that I can leave behind? And I think that takes a very intentional approach that if we're so caught up in the busyness of our schedule and the chaos that's going on, we don't purposely create space. And I think space is a little bit different than boundaries because I don't even think we can get to the point of boundaries if we don't create enough space in our day to assess what is going on. And so, having you to talk to right there, he's creating some space, right? So good for him because now he has a moment to process what is going on. But for so many of us that, have back-to-back meetings, this whole my life is adjusted to the Outlook calendar drives me bonkers. We operate on 30 minutes or an hour timeline with no breaks in between. People are not drinking water because they don't feel like they have time to go to the bathroom. It's the most insane philosophy that I could possibly imagine, working with people and saying, you have to be the one to create space. And if you're willing to do that, it's amazing to me. If we can create space, if that's the first thing, right? If we can create some space, then we're really able to show up for our teams in a place that's a little bit more authentic, a little bit higher energy, right? I share in the book, to me, energy is our greatest currency, right? The way that we show up, it's not how smart we are, how many things we've accomplished. It's really how are we showing up for our teams and creating that safety. And so if we want to innovate, if we want to stay relevant, we have to find a way to bring that correct energy into a room. And if we're carrying, and this is the whole thing about why I believe this is a whole person issue. We shouldn't be one thing at work and one thing at home. It's so difficult to balance. If we can just find ways to create more space so that we can process and address issues across the board, we show up for both places with a little bit more energy, right? And the thing with our energy in our teams is that it's not just the leader's responsibility to show up and bring the energy. It is your responsibility to show up with great energy. When you do that, energy is contagious. Now other people on your team, their energy is elevated, right? And so now we have a system in place where if it's a day where I'm struggling, I know that the energy that's coming from my team is going to balance out because I have given and they're going to give it back, right? And so when we can do that, we now might even find ourselves with enough energy to go home and have a pleasant evening with our family, which will then energize us. And it starts such a beautiful cycle, but it doesn't happen if we don't create the space to then find that peace. And I think we have to be intentional about that for it to be successful.
Another matter of being intentional, as I'm hearing you, is that as a leader, as someone who is getting to know, reading the book, De-Stress, learning which one I'm operating, which 4 stress points I'm operating from, but also as a leader of a team, as a member of the family, I can also start looking at observing what my team members, what my family members also operate from. Like
Yes.
When you said, I know I'm coming from an emotional space and my husband's coming from a logical space. And if your husband also knows that he's coming from a logical and you're coming from an emotional, the understanding, the awareness of that by itself helps. Now, if I'm caught in my logical place and I know my other team member, whether a family member or a work team member, comes from an emotional, then how we could, fulfill each other, how we could create that space. And then if I know another team member is more action oriented or organized oriented, how can we, disperse this stress in a way that each person can take their own best approach to it and then bringing it together, where someone might be amazing at organizing. And if I'm not, then that person becomes responsible for bringing the organization, or one person can be responsible for the action-oriented concept as they know how to do that, where it won't be on one person's shoulder, as you said. So not only getting to know and becoming aware of my own patterns, but also tuning in in my team members' patterns and how we could communicate that authentically and ask for each other's support, knowing that when we're doing a project, when something is happening where we need to attend to, then at that moment we can come in as a team and together we could create that type of a de-stress position.
Absolutely. I think that, if I think about my own family dynamic before I really embrace this philosophy, I feel like this is true of families and leaders, right? Emotional intelligence, understanding yourself is really level one. Yet all the books out there, there's so much time and energy spent on be your authentic self, tell people how you are, you got to be true to yourself. Very rarely do we take the other steps that say, but could I understand those around me better? And am I willing to do that? And again, we have to create space for that. Can't tell you how many leaders I work with that'll say, I'll say, well, how did you connect with your family or your teams this week? Oh, we didn't have time for that, right? We had T-ball, we ate dinner on the road, we had back-to-back meetings. I don't have time to connect. I had a team once tell me that they missed COVID because their leader checked in with them every day because it was required, right, from a health perspective, but that they missed that they actually had a leader that checked in with them every day to see how they were doing, how were they feeling, and that they missed that. And I thought, wow, that's, so sad. And I've had other leaders that have said, that's just not my style. I'm not an emotional person. And I'll say, it's not really about you. Right? It's about the people that are under our purview. And if we're leading a family, right, that's the family unit. And so I think that we have this amazing opportunity to just, again, create this space and recognize that not everybody thinks like us, not everybody stresses like us. And with they don't take a lot of time, very simple movements and connections, what I would consider these micro connections that we can make. We're not saying overhaul your entire relationship status overnight. Could you ask a different question at the dinner table to your spouse or to your children? And then sit back and listen and just watch what that does. Can you do that in the next meeting? Instead of just giving a status, can you open, with a question that would allow your logical people to share their work, or, your action-oriented people to something that they're proud about, your organized people to share a new process, or even your relationship way to introduce a new team member. Those small things will have a huge boost in energy, which again is contagious. And I think that we're not asking people to make major change. Anytime we're asking people to make major change, resistance comes up. But if we're saying, what are some micro habits that you can start developing today? If you knew what the outcome would be, I really believe that people would do it. They're just hesitant because they're not sure what the outcome is going to be.
If you've been doing your best, but still feel stuck in anxiety, relationship stress, or the weight of old patterns, this is where things begin to shift. At the Awareness Integration Institute Virtual Clinic, we offer something different. We provide two pathways forward. In psychotherapy, our licensed clinicians help heal unresolved trauma, reduce anxiety and depression, and navigate life transitions. In coaching, our certified coaches help you build confidence, leadership, and relationship mastery, turning insight into decisive action. Both are guided by Dr. Foojan Zain's evidence-based awareness integration theory, a structured roadmap from awareness to integration to action. During our summit, save 25% on all services from March 22nd through 29th. Visit awarenessintegration.com to book your first session or request to be matched with the right provider.
But anything we haven't shared that you really want people to know?
We've shared so many great things. Honestly, I think for me that the mantra that I want to share with people is stop wearing stress like a badge of honor. Being the most stressed, the most busy person doesn't make you the most important person in the room. It makes you the most stressed and the most busy person in the room. Yet somehow we have decided that if our response is, I'm so busy, that relates to somehow I'm so important. And I would just challenge people to create some space, Stop wearing it like a badge of honor. And I think these micro habits will just have an incredible impact on your lives overall, which in the end is what we're here for.
Listen up if you want to promote your personal growth and self-awareness. I found the Foojan app last month and I have been absolutely loving it. I personally have never learned guided meditation, but thanks to this app, I now have learned incredible tools for my own stress relief and emotional self-awareness. Not to mention, there are self-evaluation tools and professional coaching available to utilize however your journey to self-discovery takes you. Join Foojan today and redefine your life one step at a time.
Yes. Everyone, please get this book by Jennifer Stanford, De-Stressed: Proven Strategies for Leaders to Lower Stress and Boost Performance. Jennifer, how can people find you?
Pretty easy. They can just go to jenstanford.com. Everything is on there. Links to the book, speaking engagements, anything that you're interested in. And please, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I would love to continue the conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking care and being with us, especially in the middle of a rainstorm.
Thank you, Dr. Foojan. Hopefully it didn't mess this recording up too much.
No. I didn't feel it at all. I did not get wet. And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And until next week, bye-bye. Thank you for joining me for another heartfelt conversation at Inner Voice, a Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. If today's episode touched you, I invite you to take 3 simple actions. Follow Inner Voice on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Share this episode with one person who may need hope, clarity, or support. Leave a kind rating or recommendation on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube so more people can find these healing conversations. You can connect with us at awarenessintegration.com or IAII.life and learn more about psychotherapy, coaching, business coaching, mind-body services, functional medicine, and more and more. And check out Foojan app with Mira, the AI chatbot, which is trained in awareness integration, therapy and theory. Now, through International Awareness Integration Institute, you can contact us and we can be at your service in what you need. Until next time, listen to your inner voice, lead with awareness, and lead with love, and live a fulfilled life now.
Introducing a powerful new update from the Foojan app. Now with flexible subscription plans to fit your journey monthly, quarterly, or yearly. Our new AI-driven onboarding customizes your path to feeling better, faster, and enjoy a refreshed experience with stunning 3D interactive videos. Update now. Empower your inner voice with Foojan. Download today. Awareness, integration theory, certification programs. If you're a psychotherapist, clinician, or coach ready to elevate your impact, I invite you to become certified in the Awareness Integration Theory, AIT model. AIT is a structured, evidence-informed approach that strengthens emotional regulation, reduces anxiety and depression patterns, and helps clients create lasting change. Our training is practical, clear, and immediately usable in sessions, so you can work with more confidence and consistency. Join a global community of practitioners shaping the future of integrative mental health. Become AIT certified today. Visit awarenessintegration.com.